Next, we move on to creating user-based features. So we group by customer ID to create user-based user features. So user features is equal to df group by customer ID that aggregate with total purchase. Basically counts like the number of transactions for each of the customer, the total item. It finds like the total quantity of like the items purchased by the customer, all the way down to like unique product, which basically like counts like the number of like unique products based purchased by like the customer. Then afterwards we basically display the first 5 rows of this data set. So here's our output: user features with the columns of customer ID all the way down to the unique products over here. Then we move on to performing aggregation on user data. So aggregate by user and product to get the user item interactions. So user items equal to df.group by bracket customer ID, comma, stock code aggregate, parentheses, quantity, total spend, all the way to like our reset index. Basically what this block of code does, it basically groups the data set by the customer ID and the stock code columns to basically like calculate the quantity and the total spend for each of the customers. Next, we move on to user item matrix is equal to user item pivot with the index of customer ID, columns of stock code, and values of quantity, fill, and NA. Basically what this block of code does, it basically creates like a user item matrix for like collaborative filtering. Then we move on to basically printing out the shape of this by using user item matrix dot shape and printing out the first 5 rows. So user item matrix shape is like 4,339 rows with 3,665 columns. So here's like the first 5 rows of the data set from like stock code 10,002 all the way down to post. Next, we move on to like user category interactions. So user category is equal to df.group by brackets customer ID, comma category dot aggregate, category quantity, category spend, and that till that reset index. Basically what this block of code does, it basically like groups the data by the customer ID and category to find like the category quantity and the category spend for each of the customers. Then afterwards we print out the first 5 rows of this data set by using user category.head. So here's the first 5 rows from the customer ID all the way to like category spend. Then we move on to creating the user monthly spending patterns by assigning df brackets year month is equal to df brackets invoice to dt.to period m. Basically this line of code converts the invoice data column to like a year month period format. Then we go to user monthly is equal to df.group by parentheses brackets customer ID comma year month gets parentheses dot aggregate monthly spend, monthly purchase, reset index. Basically what this block of code does, it basically groups the data by the customer ID and the year month, and basically it finds like the year monthly spend and monthly purchase for each of the customers. And then we print out like the first 5 rows of this data set by using a user monthly dot head. So here are the first 5 rows in this output from a customer ID all the way to like monthly purchase. Then we move on to extracting time-based trends. So monthly sales is equal to df.group by brackets year month aggregate total sales, number of transactions, new customers are reset. Basically what this block of code does, it basically groups the data by like the year month and finds like the total sales, the number of transactions, and number of customers. Next we move on to like visualization of like monthly sales trend with plt.figure figure size is equal to 12 comma 6, basically creating a new figure for the plot. Then we move on to plt.plot monthly sales brackets of year month as type string monthly sales brackets total sales brackets parentheses. Basically this line of code basically plots like the total sales on the y-axis and plots like the year month on like the x-axis as like a line chart, and basically converts the year month as to a string to ensure like the proper labeling on the x-axis. Then afterwards we title it with monthly sales, we label the x and y axis, we rotate the x ticks by 245, and then we plot it over here. So here's our monthly sales trend chart. So basically it's like it has like an upward trend in the total numbers of sales, and this is probably related to like seasonality patterns such as like major holidays during like the later half of the year, such as like Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas basically increases the consumer demand to purchase more. Next, we move on to seasonal analysis by month. So df brackets month is equal to df.invoice data to dat month. Basically, this line of code basically extracts like the month from like the invoice data and creates like a new column month that contains like the integers from like 1, which is January, all the way to 12, which is December. Then we move on to monthly average is equal to df.group by brackets month brackets total price dot mean. Basically, this block of code groups like the data by like the month column and calculates like the mean of like the total price for each of the month, which gives us like the average purchasing value for each of the month. Then we create like a figure plot of like 10 inches width and 5 inches tall for like the visualization. Then we plot this visualization as a bar chart with like the month on the x-axis and like the purchasing values on the y-axis. And then we title it and then we label the x-axis. We rotate x ticks by 360 and then we label the y-axis and then we plot it. So here's the average purchase value by month. So January has like the highest, and then it follows down in a downward trend. Then it picks up like around during the summer. Then it falls off like during like the later half of the year, which is like October and November, and then it picks up during December, which makes sense because there's Christmas and there's like holidays such as Christmas and Hanukkah, so people might be spending a lot more during this month. Next, we move on to time-based trends weekly sales. So df.week of the year is equal to df.invoice dt.string f time bracket parentheses y to percentage u. Basically, this line of code basically extracts like the week of the year from like the invoice column and creates like a new column called like the week of the year column, which like formats the year and the week in a way that's like in like the percentage y per u percentage u format, where it's like the year goes first and then the week basically. So such as like 2025 comma 38, which represents like the 38th week of 2005 weekly. So then we do weekly sales as go to df.group by week of the year total spends sum. Basically, this calculates the total price for each of the week. Then we plot it by, then we create a figure plot of 12 inches width and 6 inches height. And then we do weekly sales plot. Basically, this plots the weekly sales data as like a line chart with like the weeks on the x-axis and then the total sales on the y-axis. Then we title it, label the x-axis, the y-axis, and we rotate the tick axis by 45 and then we plot it. So here's our weekly sales trend visualization. So this graph has a clearly upward trend. As like the week goes on, there's more sales being generated. Then we move on to another time-based trend of the customer acquisition over time. So customer first purchase is equal to df.group by brackets customer ID brackets invoice date to min our reset index. Basically, with this line of code groups the data by the customer ID and finds like the earliest invoice data for like each of the customers, representing like their first purchase. Next, we move on to customer first purchase is equal to brackets year and month, which is equal to customer first purchase brackets invoice data to dt to period brackets m. Basically, this line of code converts the invoice data column to in the customer first purchase to like a year format. Then we move on to new customers per month. You usually go to customers first purchase group by year month brackets customer ID count. Basically, this line of code groups the data by the year month and basically counts the number of unique customer ID for each of the month. Then we create like a new figure with like 12 inches width by 6 inches height for the visualization. Then we plot the new customers per month as like a bar chart with the months on the x-axis and like the number of new customers on the y-axis. And then we title it as like new customers acquired per month, and then we label the x and y-axis. We rotate x ticks by 45, and then we plot it with plt.show. So here are the new customers acquired per month. So the highest number of customers happened in like December of 2010. Then it follows the head and has like a downwards trend all the way till like August, and then it picks up slightly during the September. However, then it basically falls down all the way to like the December 2011.